Welcome back to another episode of the Student Life Edvisors podcast. My name is Tré.
I'm Elaine.
So today our topic is courageous conversations. So with something like that, people may not be familiar with the term. What is a courageous conversation? Is it just some alliteration play, or is there something deeper going on there?
So it's a little deeper. You've probably already had some of these in your lifetime, but we're just putting a name to it, and it's just the term courageous conversations, which means any conversation that's difficult to have, could be a difficult topic to talk about, or it might just have you getting a little dreading or getting a little anxiety of bringing up a topic to have a conversation with someone else. So you have to be courageous to bring up the topic and talk through some issues you're going through. And I think a great time to start these conversations is when you're talking about going to college. Now, your parents might be heavily involved, other family members might be heavily involved in your college career, but it is kind of yours. It is your college journey, your college path. So when we're talking about courageous conversations, it's, if you might be doing something or have an interest in something that maybe your parents may not be the most thrilled about, it's about putting the time in to have the conversation, to be honest and explain how you're feeling and just let them know what's happening. So sometimes you do have to prepare a little bit and get yourself amped up to get in there and have those conversations. Now, we can apply this to so many different things. So we're just going to stick to college, but this is a great skill to have. Courageous conversations they never end.
No, they don't. You have to have a courageous conversation, not only about college. When you enter the workforce after that, you will be having some courageous conversations within your career, whether that's trying to get a job. I mean, just a job interview in of itself is a courageous conversation, depending on what kind of job you're applying for. But even when you're on the job, a raise. Courageous conversation. What
promotion?
About a promotion? What if you're in a situation where you see something at work and you want to address that matter because you don't think that maybe someone's behavior is good practice for them, maybe having some longevity at a company? I mean, it can go all over the place.
It can go all over the place. It can even get into your personal relationships that you have with different people, your friends, your significant others, and you've probably already had some. To be honest with you, you probably already had some along the way. You might have had some with teachers, counselors, your parents in the past about different things that are happening. So we just wanted to have an episode about this topic, because not only are you going to face it your whole life, but if you're setting up your journey, you're setting up your path, it's kind of your place to kind of put what you want out there. And also, when we're talking about money tends to be a huge topic that qualifies for a lot of courageous conversations.
I completely agree. But what's the one good thing, and I'm sure we'll hit on this in the episode, but the more courageous conversations you have, the easier it is to continue to have courageous conversations, even if it's not related to what the previous courageous conversation was about.
I think it's the confidence you start to build when you start to, in some ways stand up for what you believe, your opinions, how you're feeling, and taking the steps to make sure that you continue on the path that you want to continue on. So, you have to have a level of confidence to step into these conversations, but you start building that each time you successfully get through it. Because here's the thing. We're talking about having a conversation. We're talking about talking to somebody or people that may not be on the same page as you. You might never agree. You might never get to a conclusion where everybody's happy.
That's the truth. You could say that again.
Yes, but you've at least put out in the world what you believe, how you feel, and how you would like to move forward, and whatever the conversation could be. So, I think that's a really good point, is you start building your confidence. You start building who you are and really helping yourself get to where you want to be.
Gotcha. So we're circling back to what that courageous conversation means as far as you as a college student. Who do you need to have this conversation with? I mean, who's your starting point? Where do you go? Do you have the conversation with the school you want to go to, or do you go to your parents? What do you do?
So not every conversation is going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. So just want to put that out there. If you and your parents might be on the same page, so you probably don't need to have too much of a difficult conversation. You just need to talk about it. Yeah. Lay out the plan, get there. But say you and your parents aren't on the same page. Say you want to go and be a music major, and your parents really don't want you to be. They want you to be an engineer. They want you to be pre-med. They want you to do political science, whatever it is.
Whatever.
They might have an idea of what they want for their child, and it's not aligning with you. So that could be a far more difficult conversation for that student versus the one where you and your parents are on the exact same page. You're going to be working towards the same goal. It's going to be super easy. So you just want to identify kind of what you want to do first. In some ways, you need to have a courageous conversation with yourself. Be honest.
Ooh, with you. Have a courageous conversation with yourself. Okay, I like that one.
You want to be honest, and you want to lay out kind of your goals and what you want to work towards. And then you want to start presenting it to the people who are going to be involved in the process. So starting with your parents or family members or anybody who's helping you go to college, it's good to let them know where you are, what you want to do, what you really want to focus on, what you really think you want to do in life. And you might have more answers or less answers depending on who you are, but even choosing a college, that's a tough decision.
I agree.
And I know you kind of didn't end up where you were from.
Oh, no, I did not. As far as me and picking the school that I was going to, I didn't have to go the courageous conversation route, or at least it didn't feel like it in the moment, I'd say. But when it was time for me to go to college, I was pretty fixated on one school. I knew that I was going there, and I didn't really get any pushback from any of my family members. However, I do know several of the individuals I went to school with, and they had to have some courageous conversations about picking the school that they wanted to go to versus maybe where their parents wanted them to go.
There's a lot of emotion when it comes to picking a school. Sometimes there's not, like in your situation. I kind of feel like I've seen it happen with my friends that maybe their family or alum at a particular school.
Oh, the legacy.
The legacy.
The legacy. That'll get you.
And then also the cost of school. Mm-hmm. So some parents are really like, look, we don't have that much money. We can't really afford for you to go to a school that costs over $12,000 a year. So that usually leaves you with state school. If that's something you really don't want to do, you need to have that conversation with parents. I'd recommend, especially when it comes to money, even though you want something, listen.
Please do.
Because if
you're not footing the bill, you need to chill.
And even if you are footing the bill, your parents might have some really helpful, insightful things to share with you of why you shouldn't go to a school just because of the name or where you want to go.
That's a good point.
It could go into conversations of like, okay, you're going to have to take on debt. What does debt look like later? How expensive is debt? The cost to borrow money.
And what does debt feel like?
Yes.
Because some of your parents or the individual you're having that courageous conversation with may be able to give you some insight on that.
Maybe they were the ones who had to deal with mass amounts of debt after graduating from a school. So I would say, when you're going into this, be open-minded. You definitely want to stand up for yourself and put it out there, but you could go in and come out with a different conclusion than you originally walked into once you're starting to hear perspectives of why maybe your parents are looking for things to go a certain way, why they don't maybe agree with some of the thoughts that you put out there and give you other options or alternatives, or maybe they give you some homework to take that back and come up with other options or kind of an agreement. Because not only choosing a school, but then we're talking about cost of a school. Now, this is one that I talk about quite a bit. It's really figuring out the school of your means.
School of your means versus the school of your dreams.
Yes.
Sometimes those two aren't always in sync. Sometimes they are.
Sometimes they are.
It's possible, but that's not just for rhyme. That is a real situation, consideration
very
for folks.
Real. It's very real, and it can be limiting. I don't want to sugarcoat it in any way. It can be limiting. However, something we've seen, especially over the last few years, I think Gen Z is kind of showing this quite a bit, is sometimes brand name, sticker, name isn't the only way you can go to succeed. I will never discourage anyone from applying anywhere because you never know what will happen with financial aid.
Agreed.
You'll never know what financial aid comes back to you and how a school's willing to help you. But you need to set budgets and you need to set a price that you and anyone helping you, could be parents, grandparents, aunts, guardians, family, friends, whoever is in your kind of pack to help you get to college and beyond, or even if it's just you yourself, you need to set some boundaries and realistic budgets around the cost of college. And money's a tough subject to talk about.
I agree. Money is just, it's one of those topics that for lots of families can be pretty taboo. I know there are a lot of my friends who they didn't have conversations with their parents about money. And I understand that can be a predicament for a lot of people. So even just asking questions about it can maybe feel intrusive to the individual that you maybe need to have a courageous conversation with. But at the same time, you have to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere, and you know you're the people you're talking to the best. You're having this conversation because you're close to them. They're going to help you pay for school, or they're going to hear you out. And if you have no idea of how much they've set aside for you to go to school, or you have no idea how much they're willing to cover for you to go to school, and in some families, fortunately, that number may be 0, but you're never going to know that
unless you ask.
Until you ask. And you can even say, you can approach it any way you want, but you can even approach it saying, I know you don't like to share much about your financial situation. However, I'm trying to budget for school next year, or whenever it's going to be. Can I have an idea of how much you'll be able to help me? I completely understand whatever number you come back with. It's just I want to make decisions based on what you tell me, so I don't have an unrealistic expectation when I'm applying to a $50,000 per year school. Ooh. that we're just going to do it. Because I think families and parents and a lot of legal guardians out there do a lot to protect their children. And you never, a lot of families I've talked to, and I think even my own personal experiences, I never wanted for anything. Now, did I get the name brand stuff all the time? No. But I always got what I needed. So in some ways you have this comfort and security around that. But in some ways it might set you up for not understanding how much things cost and how affordable things are to you and your people.
And let's be honest, college is a big expense.
It's a huge expense.
College, for some people, might be, depending on their major, the biggest expense that they ever have in life. Because depending on what your major is, maybe depending on how many degrees you go after, it could cost more, in some cases, than maybe a condo or an apartment, or a house. We don't know. It depends.
More than a car?
Well, yeah. More than the car for a lot of people. Let's just say, top 3 expenses that you maybe have in a lifetime. College can be one of those. So this isn't the same level of expense, if you will, as something like, I want this for the holiday or my birthday. I'd like to get this particular gift. This is on a different level, which is why the magnitude of this conversation is up there.
Yeah.
Thank you for getting to this point in the podcast. As you know, we bring you a bonus code with every episode. This episode, your bonus code is CONVO. That's CONVO. Remember that you can use those bonus codes to enter into exclusive scholarships only available on scholarshippoints.com. Once again, the bonus code is CONVO. That's CONVO. Keep listening.
And then I think another courageous conversation to have about college is, this kind of hit home for me a bit. I actually applied to some schools in Virginia. I just wanted to. And I'm from Massachusetts.
Why was that?
I was just looking at different programs, and I actually had no idea where I wanted to go.
Okay.
So I applied to way too many schools. But that's neither here nor there. Most of them were local in the Massachusetts area. I'm from Massachusetts. There's a college on every corner, it feels like. So
I heard.
You can, that's not 100% true out of the city, but you have a lot of options. But I wanted to maybe try something else. At one point, I wanted, in my high school life, I wanted to go to California. And then I was like, well, that's kind of far. So I was like, well, Virginia's not New York, but it's probably close to what I know. So I applied to a few colleges there. And my mother was like,
What did she say?
I didn't tell her necessarily.
Oh, no.
Luckily, I qualified for a lot of application waivers, so that was helpful. Application fee waivers.
Oh, yeah, those can add up.
Those can add up. So I could apply to as many schools as I wanted to because I had a waiver and I didn't have to worry about that. But then it also let me like do things ad hoc, like just no plan, just send out applications, see what happened. And I essentially got into basically every school I applied to, plus got waitlisted at a few schools. But I got into the ones in Virginia, and I was for some reason ready to go. And my mother was like, absolutely not. You're not moving far away from home. It's not really, my family's all based in Massachusetts for the most part. Love them to death. I miss Massachusetts to this day. Everybody knows that. But especially at that time, it was just not something my mother was comfortable with. And I don't think that's an uncommon sentiment.
Yeah.
So I knew bringing it up, it wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to mention it. Like, heart was racing, like kind of sweating a little bit. It's like, got into a college. Do you mind? And she was like, no, you're not going. And it was fine because, once again, I didn't really have an expense to apply there. I got in. I let them know I wasn't going to be attending. Picked a school in Massachusetts. But at the same time, like, at the time I didn't realize, like, you know, it's kind of a lot to spring that on a parent out of nowhere.
You know what? That's a fair point. It can be a lot for a parent, and I do think that at least when you're going through the college application process and you're picking the school that you want to go to, yeah, sometimes we can only see it from the student's perspective, but that is a lot to put on the parent.
It's a lot. We, like, honestly, it's easy now, I feel like, to get, I mean, even back then it was easy to fly around on airplanes and stuff, but it wasn't something my family did often. So the concept of me being that far away from home, not a drive away, a flight away, like, or a super long drive. It was just a lot to put on my parents. And honestly, I should have just had the conversation ahead of time. Here's where I'm applying. Even if I didn't have a plan, what do you think? And let them have the conversation then. Because it would have been easier than just, I mean, I put in all the work.
Right.
So it's one of those things that if you have the conversation ahead of time, you can prepare everyone. I still could have done it. There wasn't really anything stopping me from doing this, but it could have just put me in the mindset where I knew that if I got in, there's going to be a few more hurdles, but at least they're prepared for it. So I kind of felt like in some ways I put it up in a way that I knew it wasn't going to happen. I knew it wasn't going to be something that was going to be accepted. My parents are very loving people. They would have come around no matter what my decision would have been, but it's a lot that I sprung on my mom. Sorry, Mom. But at the same time, like, I picked a school that made sense for us. Everything was great. But at the same time, like, it's just one of those things that I would recommend against that, just because I didn't really set myself up to have an honest conversation, be somewhat mature about it, to be honest with you, and then confident in my own decision. Now, there was a lot of pieces probably missing in my particular situation, but if you have it ahead of time and have those conversations, at least you can put it out on the table. And like I said, I didn't actually get what I wanted in the end, what I thought I wanted. I don't think I really wanted it when it comes down to it. But we had the conversation, but it was pretty short, and we didn't really resolve anything. It was just like, no, but I want to, too far, okay.
Right. I think you make a valid point, at least with your story, which is that when we're having courageous conversations with particular individuals, especially when it comes to college and picking the college, figuring out how you're going to pay for it, what can be a very, I would say, beneficial aspect of the courageous conversation is the time when you initiate it. So you mentioned that you kind of just did your own thing, and then said, hey, parents, what's going on? Here's the situation. What do you think about it? Whereas instead, with the courageous conversation, we can kind of start that off by saying, hey, I'm thinking about this. How would you like to partner alongside me in this decision? Yeah. So getting them involved at the beginning so that at the end, it's not just a college application vomit saying, hey, I applied to 10 schools. I didn't talk to you about any of those 10 schools, but what do you think? And then you get this back and forth of, hey, I didn't know anything about these schools. What school is this? Where is this? I don't even know where this is. This school's 3,000 miles away, whatever it may be. So,
well, I think I totally eliminated the part of opening a dialogue.
oh,
It was just a whole thing of having, I did this, this was the result, this is my mother, this is my feeling, that's it. Okay. We didn't have a dialogue of, okay, why do you want to be here? Like, it was just already kind of set. I didn't set it up where it was a planned conversation. I went through my rationale of, like, I like these majors at this particular school. I have a family member who doesn't live very far away from the school. So I think I could handle it and move there and kind of go from that point. And I really want to spread my wings and get out
and
there
fly
in the world.
away.
Literally fly away. But, it wasn't insightful. So I would always recommend, now doing what I've done, set it up a little bit. Start a dialogue, because you might have really close conversations with people in your life. But in all honesty, I'm starting to realize the older I get, that's not really the norm. People don't necessarily have conversations all the time about how they're feeling. Some families are great at that. It's just something that they do. And it could be about different topics and they stay away from different topics. But
Right.
if you just make that a practice, it makes it easier, like we were talking about before, to have conversations, to lay out your thoughts, what you're thinking, what you think you will get out of this, and give the opportunity for the other parties to listen, absorb, and then respond, where then you listen and absorb. You kind of put all the pieces together to get an idea of where you're going.
I like that concept. I agree. I think that with courageous conversations, by getting those started, making that a practice of yours, you can open up dialogue that you may not be able to get had you just avoided the conversation altogether. And like you said, you have individuals who maybe don't go deep with some things, but with the courageous conversations, by making that a practice, you can open that conversation up, and then who knows what you discover in the midst of a dialogue. Because, for example, if you're a student in college and you're having a conversation with your parent or guardian about the colleges that you want to go to, then you can explain to them why you're looking at those schools. And then who knows, maybe your parent or guardian says, hey, if you're really interested in engineering, I have a colleague or I have a friend that I went to school with who really enjoyed the engineering program at this school. And though that wasn't on your list, I think you should look into it. But you can't have that kind of result if you're not willing to have the conversation.
And sometimes you just honestly have to get the guts to do it, because I know I can be a timid person, believe it or not. I can be kind of timid. I don't necessarily like having conversations with people that could have conflicting opinions, where I know it might stir something up, stir the pot a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
But you can't avoid them in life all the time. You just can't. You need to get yourself together and have the conversation. One thing I find to be very helpful now, it's not the same, because now we have, in the past it wasn't the same for me. I didn't have access to like all the electronics. But now you can send someone a text, be like, hey, can I talk to you tomorrow at 3:00? Set the time, set the stage that this conversation is going to happen. If they ask what's about, you can give them kind of a brief overview so they can kind of prepare.
Give them a preview.
And then you can go ahead and have the conversation then. Because if you kind of set a time for yourself, you won't be like, should I do it now? Should I do it now? How about now? And then check it out, or maybe not do it.
It's hard to chicken out when you got the timestamp on there.
Got the timestamp, and then they'll say, oh, hey, I thought we wanted to talk tomorrow at 3. Be like, oh.
And you're like, oh, I guess it's 3. I got to do it now.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen.
And, if you're having a conversation that you're going to have, why not prepare a little bit? Jot down some notes about things you want to talk about, points you want to get across. It'll just help you kind of organize yourself and your thoughts. Because, I don't know, if I get anxious and I'm having a conversation, I feel like I start tripping over my words. I can't get it out.
You forget what you had to say in the first place.
And then you leave the conversation, you're like, oh, I had 10 more points.
Yep.
And I'm like, can I go back? So it's definitely nice to organize yourself and keep yourself like kind of together.
No, I like that. I like that concept. And I think the biggest thing, like we said, is that this is an interpersonal skill that will not just be irrelevant in a certain period of time. Courageous conversations, you'll have to have those throughout life. So maybe your first courageous conversation that you would call a courageous conversation, because we've all had them at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe we had our first courageous conversation in kindergarten or something.
Yep.
You saw somebody do something to one of your classmates and you said, hey, that's wrong, and then you told the teacher about it or whatnot. But maybe a big courageous conversation, a step for someone would be, hey, I want to go to college and I need to figure out what school I want to go to. Here are the schools that I'm looking at. Here's why. Here's how much they cost. What do you think about that? Mm-hmm. And then maybe your parents' response is, well, maybe do you want to figure out somewhere that's a little closer? Do you sure you want to go to the 4-year university? You could go the 2-year route and save money by staying here. You never know what happens when you can open the door with one of these conversations.
Yeah, and sometimes they stem like kind of a series to help guide you through. And you set up like a new sense or a new like strength in the relationship that now you feel like more you can rely on each other, because you're like, wow, like I had this conversation, we got through it.
Yes, we did.
We survived.
Though it was crazy.
It was crazy. We hit some points. It got a little tense in there, but we walked out. We have a plan. We're both kind of like working on this goal together to help me through there. It's a great thing to have. In all honesty, if you have people in your life willing to have these conversations with you, it's just a blessing.
Seriously.
It just is.
Yeah, it will benefit you well beyond your college years. I have courageous conversations with people now that I think about it all the time. And the
you, Tré.
And the people I can have courageous conversations with, those are the individuals where the relationship is a lot tighter than those I can't have those conversations with. So it really does make a difference, I think, for the college student, but even beyond that.
Definitely.
I really do think that when you can have a courageous conversation, it makes a big difference for the college student, but even beyond that.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So, all right, y'all. That was the episode, Courageous Conversations. We hope that you are going to have some courageous conversations about that job promotion, the school that you want to go to, how much the school costs. Talk to your parent or guardian about that, or whoever's going to be assisting you in paying for college. And let's do it. Let's use this skill so that you can not only impact your current situation as far as where you're going to school, but beyond that as well.
Like build your confidence.
Build your confidence, and so on and so forth. Let's do it. Courageous conversations. I'm all for it. I like the alliteration. Courageous conversation. See, I'm rambling. This ain't good. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Student Life Advisors podcast. Once again, courageous conversations. And we hope that this podcast episode was a benefit for you. So until next time, we'll see you on the Student Life Advisors podcast.